So one of the things about Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, that I love is how working with these practices or sadhanas, how they profoundly transform the mind. So I thought to talk about that a little bit today. So it's very easy to see how our minds are so outwardly focused. Our sense consciousnesses are always scanning for an object. This usually leads to craving or aversion, and then, of course, the afflictions arise. And so in the Tara practice, we use this habit of being so outwardly directed, but we transform it into positive qualities. So we first imagine Tara outwardly relating to her, and then at the end of the practice, absorbing her into our mind. And this gets us to remember that Tara originated in our mind and reminds us that we are the ones that project things and that our mind is the source of our happiness and misery. Now, that's not how we usually think. At least that's not how I usually think. Our default thinking is that something or someone outside of us caused our misery, hurt us. For example, if we hear angry words, sound waves come in our ears. We project a meaning onto the sounds, and then we get angry. So really, it's our mind that is creating this misery, and it's also the mind that creates our happiness. So in the Tara sadhana, we're projecting compassion and wisdom in the form of green Tara. We're projecting positive qualities we have in our minds. We're projecting them in a physical form that we imagine with our mental consciousnesses, and then we relate to it. This has a very profound effect on our mind. In this practice, we do a lot of visualization, or a better word is really using our imagination, imagining. When we bring green Tara to mind, we're working with our imagination. It's not a sense consciousness. And we can imagine images, sounds, smells, tastes, physical sensations. Like when we make mental offerings of various substances, we imagine the sensory pleasure derived from enjoying them. When we imagine green Tara, we're not imagining a two-dimensional picture or a statue, but a live, three-dimensional figure made of light. Visualizing or imagining green Tara is a tool to train our mental consciousness. It's a conceptual object, and conceptual objects are focused on with a mental consciousness. So working with the image of green Tara or any Buddha, it is advised to imagine her at a distance of about an arm's length in front of us, a little higher than we are. And you can imagine different sizes and see what works best for your mind. I've found that if I make the visualization too big, my mind gets scattered and it's harder to concentrate. Some recommend making the image the size of your thumb, others the size of your hand, but check to see what works with your mind. And so we look down, and green Tara is slightly above at the level of our forehead. And focusing on the image of Tara or any Buddha is much more beneficial than just focusing on our breath when concentrating, because we can pair our concentration on the image with taking refuge, reaffirming our bodhicitta aim as well. And this way of concentrating brings very far-reaching benefits to us. It strengthens our refuge, our bodhicitta, and we develop a relationship with that Buddha. And of course, it also creates merit. Now, there's two very important aspects of visualization. When we visualize, we make an appearance arise in our imagination. At first, it isn't clear because we aren't very familiar with the image. So we need to look at the image of green Tara a lot. We can just think how easy it is to bring the image of our mother's face to our mind. Even if our mother has been dead for many years, it still pops up very quickly. Why? Because we're so familiar with it. So we need to get familiar with the image of green Tara. We do that by carefully looking at the image a lot over time. Secondly, we generate a feeling that green Tara is in front of us. We have the feeling that a living Buddha made of light is right in front of us. Again, when we have the feeling of green Tara in front of us, we're directing our minds toward wisdom and compassion. And this is a very different feeling than the usual one of our mind going towards objects of desire or anger. So when we imagine green Tara, our mind is focused on a wholesome object that strongly influences our mind. We imagine that we actually have the same qualities that Tara has, and that we are in the process of developing those qualities more fully. That helps us connect then with her. To connect with Tara, I often focus on the eyes first. And this brings up kind of this feeling of connecting with another living being. She's looking at me with compassion. She knows everything about me, but still looking at me with compassion, no judgment. That's kind of powerful, because our minds often have kind of poor images of ourselves. So focusing on Tara and remembering her qualities, there's not going to be any judgment there. Only compassion and loving kindness. And this is because she sees my potential, my Buddha nature. She knows very clearly that I can achieve the same enlightenment that she has. So if we think of wisdom and compassion appearing in a certain way, it helps us to tune into what wisdom and compassion are and helps us develop these qualities more quickly. Now, different Buddhas express different aspects of awakening. Green Tara is the embodiment of enlightening activity. She has the ability to bring quick wisdom and to bring success and to dispel hindrances. And all of the different Buddhas with their different aspects, how they look so different, they tap into something different in each of us. Now, if the visualization is relatively new for us, then it's best not to get hung up on the minute details at first. And Lama Tsongkhapa gives very practical advice about visualizations. Start with a vague image and feeling of the whole image first, and then over time feel in the details. So the practice is cumulative. So thinking that we're going to get a very clear image at first when we're new to this is not even remotely realistic. This can take some years, actually. So we want to be patient and gentle and kind and accepting of what comes to the mind. If you're able to keep the eyes, for example, in sharp focus, then you can start adding another detail without losing the first detail. But if you lose the first detail when trying to add a second one, then it's just too soon. That's all that means. And so you just go back to the first detail and get your mind on that for more time. Now, when we bring the image to mind, then we hold on to whatever aspects are clear and accept that. And in each meditation session, this is very different. For me, usually the early morning meditations, I have a clearer mind, and so the images are clearer, and I can hold on to them for a longer period of time. At the end of the day, when I'm fatigued or tired, it's more difficult. That isn't always the case, but more often than not. And so if I get a really clear image in one session, I don't bring that expectation to the next session. That's not going to be helpful because the mind changes continually. So it's always different. So we accept whatever comes to the mind. And then, so we have to train ourselves to recognize what comes to the mind and not go after making it more perfect, pushing harder. getting it more clear. That is not helpful. It doesn't come generally. So whatever comes at first, then we accept that, and then we focus our mindfulness, our attention on that, and then keep that there. Now, as we do that, if the clarity starts to fade, then we just, again, generate the entire rough form again, refresh the visualization, and then come back to it. So again, very gentle, nothing pushing, nothing forcing, just allowing. The point of visualizing is that practicing this way expands our awareness and understanding of many things at once. And that's very helpful. Each detail represents something. For example, seeing Tara with her right hand reaching out and her right foot extended to benefit others reminds us to reflect. Do I reach out to benefit others? Do I approach others with openness and compassion? Her image acts as a mirror for us to examine ourselves and to think about how we can approach others with an open hand and a kind heart. And then all of this visualization is much more meaningful and significant if we generate these feelings and images within the context of emptiness. So to start with that, we can think that Tara has a body made of light, not something concrete that exists from its own side, something that is simply an appearance to the mind made of light. This leads us to an understanding of emptiness independent arising. It's leading us into understanding that things that we think are very concrete with their own nature as objective entities out there are actually appearances to our mind, a dependent arising appearance that doesn't have its own nature. It depends on the mind that's visualizing it. This gets us more in line with the reality of how things actually exist. There's also, I think, something very quite transformative in bringing the image of the light body of Tara, or any Buddha for that matter, to the crown of the head and then dissolving it into us. I think on an experiential level, we're experiencing the way things exist in a more realistic manner. Not solid, not concrete, not permanent. I think doing this over and over again has a very profound effect on our mind. So as we continue with this beautiful practice, we can trust, we can develop our ability to visualize pure wisdom and compassion, trust that we can develop our wisdom and compassion exactly as Tara has done, and we can become fully awakened in order to benefit all living beings.